How strong is the emotional attachment for you?
Well, it's very strong, although, to be honest, my real emotional attachment is to the old Highbury that I grew up with when it was terracing at both ends and standing initially on the west lower terrace and then on the north bank. From 81 to 91, I stood on the north bank every home game. So that's the ground that I really remember.
I suppose it's almost like my second home, because it's a constant, you know, when everything else is changing in your life. You know, in terms of work or family or anything, it's the one place you go to, and you sit in the same seat every week, and you know, so there's something. It means security in a way to me, I suppose.
Well, can you tell us about your first ever trip to Highbury?
Well, I think I probably would have been about 7 when I first went to Highbury, and I think my first football match was actually Wembley. And I went to the Charity Shield and saw, I think it was Liverpool-West Ham, and I was very shocked because they had fences there. And I was delighted to get to Highbury and there weren't fences. I thought that was a really good thing. It was probably an Arsenal-Watford match, I think, in about 1981. And I'm sure I didn't really watch the match, you know, I'm sure I was too young, I was just looking around. And I was happy to be there because I was with my dad and brother.
Well, I was only 5 the first time I came here. I decided I was going to be an Arsenal fan. My mum had given me a shirt. I didn't want the same shirt as my brother. He's a Tottenham fan. And my dad brought me along here, even though he's a Tottenham fan as well. And we got seats. I think we were in the East Stand. I don't know for sure. We were playing Stoke City, August 71. We lost 1-0. And I spent most of the game looking away from the pitch at all the people. I'd never seen so many people in my life. And there was one guy I remember in particular had quite a big birthmark on his face. And I was obsessed by it. I was 5. So I just stared at him. And the smell of cigarette smoke and cigar smoke, that's the thing I remember from going to football all through the 70s.
I started going regularly to Highbury when George Graham arrived, and it was the season, the 88-89 season, when we won the league. And I was about 13, 14, and I was just old enough to go on the train, you know, without my parents. And I used to go with a friend to Arsenal. And I would always go, and I was a junior gunner till I was about 16, actually, don't tell anyone. And I would always go and try and get to the ground when the gates opened, which was, I think, 1:30. And I would stand and have this fantastic position in the North Bank. And then at about 2 minutes to 3, some giant would always come and stand right in front of me. And that was it. I would never see very much of the match.
The atmosphere must have been good in those days, though.
The atmosphere was great in those days, but people do romanticise a little bit, I think, about standing on the terraces. I couldn't really see very much. And when we scored, I would be elated, but I'd half dread scoring a goal because you literally would be moved down a few metres and then back up a few metres. And I remember, you know, when I'd wave a flag and getting caught in my eye and things like that. So it was exhilarating, but it was pretty scary, I used to find it.
Could you describe to me what it was like coming to the game in those days?
It was pretty straightforward coming to the game in those days. You get the tube, come out at Arsenal, and I used to walk across the road and go straight into the North Bank there, pay cash on the gate. Programme's about 20p. When I first started coming, which was 78, 79, that's when I started coming. My dad wouldn't let me come on my own until I was 13, which was March 79, which was good because we had a good team then, and Liam Brady was my absolute idol.
At its best, what was the North Bank like at that period?
Packed. There were really big games that I remember when there's one game in particular was the League Cup semi-final against Everton, second leg, and I think there were 55, 54 maybe thousand people in, and it was really, really packed, you know.
What's your favourite part of the ground and why?
My favourite part of the ground? The goal. The goal in the North Bank. Yeah. I'll see some great goals there. That'll be my favourite.
Oh, it's flashed in.
What is it then that makes Highbury so special?
Well, the two main stands are unique, and but I think it's growing up with a place, coming here, and everyone wanting the same thing. One minute you're at school arguing with West Ham fans and Spurs fans, and the next minute everyone's an Arsenal fan. They all agree. And then I started going away when I was 15 and going up and down the country and going to other grounds. And there's some impressive places. I remember particularly Anfield and Goodison in 1981. Pretty impressive. But Highbury just always seemed to me to be the best ground in the country.
Okay, and who's the biggest unsung hero in your opinion?
Biggest unsung hero? Well, I've thought about this, and I'm going to pick a player who wasn't really a star in his time at Highbury, but he did it for me, and that was Gilles Grimandi. Because he just fought and fought and fought. He never gave up, and he wasn't the most naturally talented player at the club. But I do remember one match when we won the double in 97-98, and it was a game at Highbury, and we were against, I think it was Crystal Palace, and almost all the players were out. Everyone was out, everyone was injured, and I think he was one of the few senior players available, and he scored, and we won 1-0. And that goal was as important as any goal at the end of the day in winning the league. So, Gilles, if you're watching, respect.
Who's Highbury's greatest unsung hero, do you feel?
Greatest unsung hero? I'll have to say Pat Rice. Or Patrice, as I think Nick Hornby christened him. I have to say that because he's still here and he's still an unsung hero now. And he's been Arsene Wenger's right-hand man for 10 years now. And he was a good fullback. One of the things you hope for when you stand close to the pitch or sit close to the pitch is that the ball might come to you and you might get to throw it back. And twice in my life it's come to me. Once I threw it back to Paolo Maldini, which was a good moment. But the other time was when I was a kid, and it was Pat Rice. Pat Rice ran over and went, "Come on, come on!" I had to quickly throw it as quickly as I could. He was not a skillful player, but he was fantastically committed, and he was Arsenal through and through.
Can you describe the anticipation of going to a game at Highbury?
I have a ritual going to Highbury, a match day ritual. I sit with my brother in the North Stand, but we don't live together, so we travel separately and meet in our seats. So I usually travel on my own, on the train, and I always listen to some music, and usually something like Ian Dury to get me in the mood for some football. And that's my ritual, yeah. Always get out at Arsenal Station and walk. Yeah, I love it.
Have you got any superstitions, like you have to have a certain breakfast on match days, or?
I am pretty good. I don't have superstitions. The only thing I don't like to do is leave before the end of a match. So I think that's quite bad luck. And the last time I did it, I think I've only really done it once in about the last 5 years. The last time I did it, I did miss a goal. And my brother stayed till the end, and he was on the same train carriage as me. So that was a mistake.
Do you have any pre-match superstitions?
I tend to arrive about 5 seconds before kick-off. Can't bear waiting around. I know they say with the new ground, try and get here early, we'll entertain you. I can't stand it. As soon as I'm there, I want it to start.
Of the current team, Thierry Henry, Highbury's witnessing probably the finest player of his generation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's probably the best player ever to wear the shirt.
Supreme accuracy, supreme confidence, the supreme player.
The highest compliment in the way you can pay him is when he's through one-on-one, you have the same Ian Wright feeling. You think, that's a goal, it's going to be a goal. When does he miss? I can't remember him ever missing. His astonishing pace. When we won the league in 2004, I think he had 20 assists, way more than the entire Manchester United midfield put together, as well as 30 goals. Astonishing player. His one of those players who you actually look forward to seeing on his own. You'd come anyway, you're an Arsenal fan, but if he's playing, it gives you an extra lift.
Which games stand out in your memory?
For lots of different reasons. I think one of the games that really stands out was in 1988, and it was the second leg of the, I think it was called the Coke, no it wasn't, it was, what was the cup called? It was the League Cup, but they keep changing the sponsor's name. It wasn't the Worthington Cup, and it wasn't the Rumbelows Cup. The Littlewoods Cup. That's it, the Littlewoods Cup. And it was the semi-final second leg of the Littlewoods Cup. And we were playing Everton, and we were a goal up from the first leg, thanks to Perry Groves. And that, for some reason, was a really memorable match for me. I was really excited because the year before, I hadn't been to Wembley. I'd never been to Wembley to see Arsenal play. And I knew that I had enough tokens from all the programmes that I would be able to get a ticket if we got to the final. So I was so excited at the prospect of Arsenal reaching a cup final at Wembley. That was really exciting. I also remember another match around that time when Arsenal were at home to Man United. And in the last minute, we were 2-0 up and we let in a goal. And as I remember it, and in about the last minute of the match, Man United had a penalty. And I was one of many people kind of braying and trying to put the, I think it was Brian McClare, and he blasted over. And I was really happy that day.
Oh, he's missed it! What a mistake! Alec Ferguson, the manager, with his head in his hands. The United fans are stunned, but in the North Bank, it's all celebration in this crowd of over 54,000.
One of the ones I felt privileged to witness was Tony Adams' second testimonial there. Just to be there and to be able to show appreciation for such a great servant of the club. Also, I think the game when we beat Everton and won the title, the year we won our second double in 97-98 season, because I didn't have a season ticket then, and there was no way of me getting into the ground, and I somehow managed to procure a ticket through a friend of a friend of a friend. And I had a ticket for that game, sat on my own, behind a pillar. That was the deal. You have a ticket, but it's behind a pillar, and it really was just this. So the whole match was spent doing that. But that was a really exciting time to be there, yeah.
My favourite games, it's hard to beat too from this season, actually. I think the Real Madrid game was an extraordinary night. Another game that sticks out was the first time I stood on the North Bank when Arsenal beat Aston Villa 2-0, but it was the last day of the 81 season, and Villa won the league, so they all came on the pitch. There were 57,000 in, and that was pretty amazing. There was another great game I remember from '79, and I stood down the front in the West Lower, and Arsenal beat Forest 2-1, 52,000 people here. 1980 against Juve in the semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup. The Italians came out. I remember Causio especially. They really did. In those days, foreign teams really looked foreign. They were suntanned. They warmed up differently. Their tracksuits were different. They were dirty as anything. So I remember Juve pretty well. Gothenburg, when we beat them 5-1, I remember that. And I remember beating Leeds here 7-0. So they were all good memories. And that was another fantastic game that comes to mind now, was when Arsenal beat Tottenham 3-2. Charlie Nicholas scored a goal having dribbled through the Tottenham defence, and some Arsenal fans still maintain that he played a 1-2 off the Tottenham defender's leg. I'm prepared to go with it, but that was a good day.
Just look at the North Bank in response to that delightful little goal by Charlie Nicholas.
And the greatest goal you've seen at Highbury?
I can think of two goals, both Thierry Henry goals. One was against Tottenham Hotspur, where he just sort of walked through everybody. But I think if I had to pick one goal at Highbury, it would be one of those Sunday games when Thierry Henry scored against Man United and we won 1-0, and he had his back to goal, and he was about 40 yards out from a free kick, and he twisted round. And Ferguson wouldn't really credit it. He said, that's a freak goal, you can't legislate for something like that. I thought, yeah, all right.
Have a look at one of the greatest goals I've seen on this ground. That's deliberate, that's majestic, sheer brilliance.
My favourite player was David Rocastle. It was just always was. You know, and I would have said that, you know, if he was still alive. For some reason, I was a young kid and I just really identified with him. And he was just part of a very young side with Paul Merson and Michael Thomas and Niall Quinn and Martin Hayes. And there was just so much promise, and it was such an exciting time to be an Arsenal fan then. It was when Graham came to the club, and he just exemplified that. He just had so much raw skill. It was just a pleasure to watch him play. And he really wasn't actually at the club for as long as he should have been, you know, when we look back. But yeah, it was a pleasure to watch him play.
Well, there was a period in the mid-80s where things were grim, actually. I mean, and we didn't have a great side. And I remember the first home game of the season one year, I think it was 85, I can't remember for sure, and we played Southampton, there were 21,000 here. And there were times when it got down to 18, 19,000. But after George Graham took over and a lot of young players came in, we had some new heroes. So I always loved Merson. I thought Merson was fantastic. And there was a goal he scored, I think it was against Sheffield Wednesday, when we hit 7 against them, where he chipped the keeper. He kept chipping the keeper that season, he was gifted. And we loved Michael Thomas and, of course, David Rocastle. I remember his debut against Newcastle, and some players, as soon as they make their debut, Vieira was the same, immediately, you know they're going to get picked the next game. And he was one of those.
Well, what do you think about the look of Highbury?
Well, I think, yeah, it is a beautiful building. It's a great structure from what little I know about things like that. And you do, whenever you have cause to go in through the East End, through the marble halls, you feel quite sort of privileged to be there. I feel I have to talk in very hushed tones when you're in there, actually. I think it'd be I really miss that, actually, I think.
Do you take a pride in the appearance of Highbury, the uniqueness of it?
I think it's the most beautiful ground in England, and I know that away fans like coming here, and I'm glad, although it's going to go, that the shape of it will be retained, and I'm really glad that we're just around the corner.
Looking forward to Emirates, what do you make of that new stadium, and what do you think it will mean for Arsenal moving there?
I think we'll get used to moving there pretty quickly. I think the experience of other teams is they get used to it. I've visited some of the new grounds, you know. I went to Filbert Street when Leicester played there, and I've been to the Walker Stadium, and fans get used to it. It's your team still. It's still the same club. I think Arsene Wenger being here is a very important transition, and Pat Rice and everybody going over. We're all going together. It's not like there's a whole clear out. And we've known about it for a while. We expect it to be a fantastic stadium. I was lucky to go to the Stadium of Light in Lisbon during Euro 2004, and it's pretty close to what we're going to have, and it's a fantastic ground, and every seat's a good seat. You know.
How are you going to feel sort of leaving Highbury for the very last time, that last match there?
I think it's going to be really weird leaving Highbury because, like I say, I think football is one of the things in your life that's a constant, you know, that's there for you when everything else is changing. So I'm used to going and sitting in the same seat, in the same stadium. So I think it's going to be a little bit unnerving moving, but obviously very exciting as well. And obviously, from what I've heard about the Emirates Stadium, it's going to be a really special place. It's something we have to do. We have to move. We have to attract the best players to the club and kind of increase the revenue. But when I went just a few days ago to the Liverpool match at Highbury, and I realised, because I was on tour, that it was going to be my penultimate visit, then it suddenly hit me that we were leaving, and I was a bit upset, actually.